material, access to the material, please reach out to him. I would also try to help you, but sometimes my time is limited, so thank you for doing that. In your welcome information, there were 3 different main sections, some material for you to look at before the class that hopefully has gained you access to the course material, and hopefully you received the email so that you have access to the slides. In addition, you, of course, have the access to the basics of DevOps as well as the WebEx instructions. Then the second main section is for use during the class. We give you access to all the material that we're going to cover in the class. So we wanted to give you access to links to the videos we're going to use, as well as some other reference material that I will mention throughout the class. One of the key reference items is in your material as Appendix D, and it's known as the DevOps reference card. And I will refer to that numerous times throughout the class because it's a fantastic 2-page summary of, or 1-page back-to-back, if you will, of DevOps and all of the different aspects. DevOps is very interesting, and we're going to learn a lot about it throughout the next 4 days. There's also a third major section of information that you can use after the class. And so there are things like study aids, there are exam taking tips for those of you that are going to take the exam, and lots of good information to embellish what you're going to learn over the next 4 days. One of the key items in that material is Appendix G, which is the exam registration material. And later today, you'll receive an email with a code for you to use to register for your exam. And you might say, well, why are you sending that to us on the first day? And the reason is that we use PeopleCert, which is a worldwide exam organization to conduct the exams for DevOps Foundation. And PeopleCert's scheduling is usually about a week out. And so I'd like for everyone to get their information about scheduling for the exam on the first day, so that you want to think about, when do you want to take the exam? They offer the exam 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. I'm not sure about holidays. I've never tested them for holidays, but they offer a wide variety of times. One of the changes that's kind of mid-process right now is the name for the code that you need to put in order to schedule your exam. Formerly, it was known as a voucher number, but more recently, they're in the process of changing it to just calling it a code. So don't get confused by that. Also, I'll mention that when you're signing up for the exam, you will be able to choose what day of the week or month that you would like to see what available times are. And then what they do is they have kind of 3 tabs for each 8-hour segment of that day. So, and that will show you the available times on that day. And while I mentioned that their scheduling is usually a week out, it's a week out in order for you to get almost any time of day that you may want. There will likely be some times of day that the exam is available sooner than a week out, but I would encourage you to not be too aggressive in your scheduling. While we will cover all of the material that you'll need to know for the exam, and I would encourage you to review the information after class each day. You'll probably want to allow a little time to study the material as well as take the sample exam and look at the other materials that are available to you. So, sorry for the long-winded introduction, but wanted to familiarize you with some of the resources that we've made available to you. Let me introduce briefly myself. My name is John Buck, and I've been teaching this class for over 2 years now. So it's a great class to get your arms around what I call this thing we call DevOps. Different people will have different conceptions based on either people they've talked to, literature that they've read, tool vendors like to call themselves DevOps, and there's really, just because you're using somebody's tool, that does not mean you're doing DevOps. And we'll be explaining that throughout the class. And you'll see that the value you're going to get from this class is to be able to get your arms around this thing that we call DevOps, which even the name is a bit of a misnomer, and we'll be covering that as well. So I also have a variety of experiences in the IT field. I've been in operations and managed a raised floor, done some programming, created some databases and managed some databases. So I look forward to sharing some of my experiences throughout the class as well. And want to mention that this class will be more valuable to you if you share some of your experiences throughout the class as well. And I'll be calling on people at different times. Geetha, I saw a note that you may have to be in listen mode, but I'll take a stab and see if you're available to talk at certain times, and maybe you can contribute as well. So with that, has everyone accessed their Nimble material up until now?
Yes,
maybe,
I have.
Let me ask.
This is David. Yes, yes, I have.
Yes.
Okay, great. Okay, excellent. So in your Nimble material, you're going to find the slides that I'm going to use. Geetha, I think when you originally got the material, you may have a former version of the slides, but I believe the content will be identical. The visual presentation just may be a little bit different. But if there are any issues with that, please reach out either to myself or Manuel.
Sure.
So besides the instructor slides, there are also a list of additional sources of information that you can find. And some of the files that that Manuel sent you in the welcome kit are also included in the Nimble material. And the reason we sent you the files separately is because my students in the past have found it valuable to actually, in some cases, be able to print the material and to have it handy. And that applies for the study aids as well as the official sample exam and the glossary. And then, of course, you've got the reference card that I mentioned earlier. So with that, Are there any questions before we start covering the slide material?
Hey, Jen, this is David. You mentioned that I've never worked with PeopleCert. I've been certified by Exim.
Yes.
You mentioned that they do 24/7. Is it over the internet and with video and all? Proctoring on the other side?
Yes. Yes, they do it through your computer.
Okay.
You will access them, and I'll give more details as time goes on through the class. But the basic setup that I guess I'll go ahead and mention at this point, since you asked, and we're a good straight person for me. The way it works, first of all, when you sign up, one of the questions they will ask you is whether what your first language is. And if any of you have another language as your first language, you will get an extra 15 minutes for taking the exam if English is a second language. So I'll mention that. But the way this works is you schedule a time, and one of the things you need to consider because of the way they operate, since you asked, and I really appreciate that too. The way it operates is that they have special software that they will have you download, and they ask you to do that 1 hour prior to the scheduled start time of your exam. So when you think about scheduling the exam, you'll want to make sure that you're available 1 hour ahead of time. So they have you initially download the software. You can check that your computer's compatible with it. And then about 10 minutes before your scheduled start time, they will have you actually run their software, in which time then they will communicate with you. There is a proctor, and one of the requirements is that you have a computer that has a camera associated with it, because they will have you show the room that you're in to show that there's no one else in the room feeding you answers. And then so they will have you show them the room. The exam is closed book, so you're not able to have the material open during the exam. You are allowed to have one piece of plain paper if you want to make notes. And then the way the exam works is that after they've checked your environment, they also require a picture identification, which you will initially give them, if I recall correctly, when you sign up for the exam, like a driver's license number or something that has a picture ID on it, and they will have you show the picture ID, and then they'll verify your face against the picture ID. And they'll do all of that in the 10 minutes before your scheduled start time, so that you should be ready to begin the exam at the scheduled start time. You'll have an hour to take the exam, or those of you, if English is a second language, you'll have an hour and 15 minutes. You probably won't need all of the time. And the way the exam works is that they will, once they start the exam, then you'll see one question at a time. Each question is multiple choice. There are 4 choices, A, B, C, or D, associated with each question. And throughout the class, or each day, starting tomorrow, we will do a number of review questions. that are like those in the exam, so you'll be able to see what the way they ask questions and what some of the questions look like. So you'll go from question to question online then. There's only one correct answer for each question. And if there's a question that you are uncertain of your answer or you're not ready to answer, there's a place in the left margin where you can note that question, and there's a little button, if you will, that will get highlighted so that you can go back to each question. You want to make sure that you answer each question, because if you don't answer it, it's wrong for sure. So that's probably more than you wanted to know at this point, but that's a good background.
It absolutely is. Thank you so much, Bob, for your detailed explanation.
Oh, you're welcome. You're welcome. And please stop me at any time if things that I say are not clear, if you'd like it said another way, or if you just have questions. I'm here to make you successful. I want you to be successful and pass the exam, in addition to learning what this thing is that we call DevOps. Other questions at this time? Well, let's
John, quick question. What if we don't clear the exam? Do we get an opportunity to do it again? Do we need to pay for it, or how does it work?
You can always take the exam again, and dependent on how you registered for this class, some of you likely have an exam guarantee where you can take it a second time. If you have the exam guarantee, then there's no additional cost to take it. If you do not, then you would have to, I believe it's about $200 to take the exam a second time if you don't have the guarantee. But I would say from the feedback I've gotten from my students, more than 95% of them over the years have passed the exam the first time. So if you listen in class and go through the material, pay attention to the reference card, I'm confident that you too can pass the exam, most likely on the first time.
Okay. Thank you, John.
You're welcome. Any other questions? Okay, then let's get started. So the purpose of this class is to make sure that you have a common understanding of this thing we call DevOps and what its goals are, its business value, the vocabulary that's used, the concepts, as well as the practices that are involved. And I'd like to start out by just mentioning that DevOps, people have a lot of different conceptions of what DevOps is, and we're going to be clarifying that throughout the class. The best descriptor, short descriptor that I've heard is that it's a movement or it's a journey. So as opposed to, for example, a project management professional methodology or ITIL or IT service management practices, DevOps is much more than that, and it's not as clearly defined, which is the reason to take a class like this so that you get an understanding of what are the different aspects of DevOps, and then I mentioned earlier that there are additional sources of information that you can then zero in on what are the pieces of DevOps that you need to focus on based on the situation that you're in. So it's a movement or a journey. It's not a project. It doesn't have a beginning and an end. It has a beginning, but it does not have an end because companies are continually making improvements in what they do as part of this thing we call DevOps. So I've talked a little bit about myself, and next I'd like for each of you to share with us a little bit about yourself, your name, if you're willing, the organization that you are part of. That's not necessary, by the way. Be interested in what kind of a role that you have. And then DevOps leans heavily on a number of other practices, such as Agile, Lean, and IT Service Management, or ITIL. And it'd be helpful if I got some understanding of your background, both in DevOps as well as Agile, Lean, and IT Service Management. And I like to tell people on maybe a high, medium, or low experience level. Then we'd like to know why you're attending the class and what you expect to learn. So would someone like to start us out?
Sure, I can take a swing, John.
Great, thank you.
Okay, my name is Hiram Bejar. I am located in Guadalajara, Mexico. I'm currently working for HPE as a finance PM. My DevOps experience is actually low, none. And
okay.
So that's the reason I'm attending, really. And well, the expectation is to, of course, understand more about DevOps and how I can apply this, to my current role, but also, to enrich the experience of my current organization and future roles, and that's it.
Excellent. Okay. And one other thing that I'm interested in capturing is that oftentimes people that take the class are either primarily dev-oriented or primarily ops-oriented.
Oh, okay.
Would you have one of those?
More operational.
Okay.
Yeah.
Excellent. Excellent.
So I mean, really, my interest is in, bridging, that, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, just by the name, that's what it's all about.
Exactly.
Yeah, and much more, as we're going to learn, because it doesn't start with dev, and it doesn't. Well, I guess it kind of ends with ops, but you're really starting with what does the business need, and you're ending up with satisfied customers is what you're working toward. So dev and ops just kind of are necessary to get from one to the other. So excellent. Well, thank you, Hiram, and welcome to the class.
Thank you.
Someone else?
Me, John?
Well, this is David Gonzalez. Hi, everybody.
Great.
My name is David. I'm working as a contractor for the Centers for Medicare and Medicaid, the Department of Health and Human Services. Most of my experience has been on the development side. I'm currently holding the PMP certification. I've been doing, ITIL foundations, Scrum, all those kinds of development methodologies, pretty much. Focusing on leading integration teams. Currently at the CMS, I am leading a team that supports the all the operations and development that has to do with all of the financial management of the Medicare and Medicaid for the United States government.
Okay.
And that's a huge operation right there.
Yes.
However, it is, yes, indeed. However, I've been more helping the government with the task of managing this monster, because it's a hydra.
Okay, so, excellent.
So,
and
yes, go ahead.
Do you have any lean experience?
I don't. I've always been working with waterfall methodologies. I have some training in Six Sigma, and that's helped quite a bit, by the way, in what we do. We've been doing also SLA management, all kinds of metrics out of operations.
Sure.
And because based on those metrics, we generate all kinds of reports that in turn will generate the fees for the operator, if you will, or the hosting contractor to get rewards for good SLAs. So I've done both, from the operations side and on the dev side, but I would say more on the dev side.
Okay. And I think you mentioned Agile, right?
Yes, but just I just took classes in Agile.
Okay. Okay. Well, that's a good start.
Yeah, thanks.
Excellent. And how about why you're attending the class and what you expect to learn?
Okay, this is a buzzword from the last 2 or 3 years. I've been hearing DevOps and DevOps here and there. I've seen that pretty much the commercial accounts are on top of DevOps, and the feds are in the Fed world. This is getting some traction. And I believe the DevOps movement or mentality is getting more and more into federal operations, and that's where we are going to be.
Excellent, excellent. Yes, while DevOps originated in the commercial space, it certainly applies to nonprofit organizations as well as government organizations. So, very good. Well, thank you for sharing, David. And you're going to learn a lot about DevOps, and it'll be interesting as you reflect on at the end of the class, what you think of DevOps at the end versus what you thought it was at the beginning, because as you mentioned, each person you talk to probably has a different opinion of what it is.
Oh yeah, so again, over the couple last 2 years, I've been hearing so many things, on one side or the other, and development versus operations. One wants, I want to put this in production real quick, but then the operations guys say, hey, wait a minute, we have to see what is it that you want to put in.
Right.
We don't want too many changes so fast. So
yes,
and you need to strike a balance between those two things.
Yes. Yeah, and the speed with which specific organizations can deliver their software is going to vary based on it could be regulatory requirements that slow them down. It could be the way they manage their hardware, versus a cloud operation. It could be customer requirements that, can slow you down. But the really good companies are deploying software, in some cases, thousands of times per day, which is
that's amazing.
Very, very different.
Yeah.
So,
oh, by the way, I wanted also to say hi to Hiram. I was a HPE employee for a few years, so a former colleague there.
Excellent.
Hey. Thanks, David.
Small world sometimes.
Yeah.
Very good. Thank you so much, and welcome to the class.
Thanks again, Chuck.
Someone else like to go next?
Me, John, Omar.
Okay, great.
Well, my name is Omar Sanchez. I'm from Mexico City. And I'm working at a company, a consulting company about best practices. I'm the CEO. And I want to know what is the relationship between DevOps and other frameworks in order to help my customers to improve the operations, the IT operations that actually are viewed now like a problem. Some companies say that IT don't provide value, but I think it's not only an IT problem. It's a business as a whole problem, and I think that DevOps is only one of the pieces that can help companies to be better to become better in the future. I have experience in ITIL and business analysis, a little bit in project management, but I think the all complete frameworks are just some pieces that the companies can use to be better.
Okay, sure. Absolutely. And do you have any Agile or Lean experience?
No. I attended a Scrum course, Foundation Scrum course a couple of weeks ago.
Okay.
I know that it's a very interesting framework. About Lean, I read some articles about it, but I don't have experience in that.
Okay, excellent. Excellent. Okay, and do you consider yourself more a dev person or an ops person?
Well, in my experience, I think I am more ops person.
Okay.
But I think I want to know more about devs because to improve the relationship entre both approaches.
Yes. Yeah, you're going to learn a lot about that throughout this class.
I hope so.
Very good. Excellent. And any other expectations for the class?
The other expectation is to learn about you and the other participants in their experience in order to become better myself.
Okay. Excellent. Excellent. Well, thank you, and welcome to the class.
Thank you very much, John.
And Geetha? How about you?
Yes, John. Yes, John. I'm Geeta, and I work for IBM as Senior Release Engineer from Canada. And DevOps experience, I use the DevOps because I'm into the deployment side, so I have been using DevOps tool for the past 2 years. And why I'm attending this course, it's to add weightage to my resume with a certification, and also to have the knowledge about the DevOps. And my expectation to learn is to know more about DevOps, because basically I'm using DevOps tools, but not very much clear on the concepts. So
Okay.
that's my expectation to learn.
Okay, excellent. And how about your Agile, Lean, or IT service management experience?
No, I don't have
Okay.
experience.
Okay, very good. And do you consider yourself to be a dev person or an ops person?
I think a dev person.
Okay, great. Well, then we're split about half and half in the class here between dev and ops. Excellent. Well, thank you all for introducing yourselves, and I'm looking forward to spending the next 4 days together on this class. So let's move ahead then. So the idea of this DevOps Foundation class is that we're going to learn about DevOps, its vocabulary, and vocabulary is very important because if you're not using the same terminology, for example, in dev and in ops, then there are communication problems. And so vocabulary is one of the things that we're going to be learning about. We'll have definitions for a number of different concepts and practices. And so you'll be learning some vocabulary. We'll also be learning about the principles and the practices of DevOps. DevOps has 3 principles that are on the reference card, and they're called the 3 ways, and we'll be learning more about those, and we'll introduce them some today and then be enhancing that throughout the class. There are also for each of the 3 principles, there are a number of practices and that are associated with each of them. And just as an aside, one of the things you'll want to know for the exam is which practices go with which principle. So you'll want to know that. And that gives you an idea, then those principles or practices give you an idea of some of the different methods or practices or tools that you can use to improve your DevOps. DevOps is also about automation, and that automation can be used to speed your software delivery processes. And we'll be talking about a variety of tools that are available. In fact, one company, and you'll get the link to this company later in the class, but one company, if you back in your earlier education had learned about the table of elements in chemistry, well, a company has developed a table of DevOps tools because there are that many different tools that are available for various aspects of DevOps. And as we go along, we'll use the videos and share with each other what some of our experiences have been. David, for you or anyone else who has their PMP, there are 16 PDUs that you can earn for taking this class. And if you want the codes so that you can report that continuing education to get those PDUs, send a note to Manuel and he'll send you the codes.
I appreciate that.
And throughout, sure. And that applies to any of the rest of you as well. If you have certifications that require continuing education, you might get some additional bump or value from this class.
By any chance, do you know the distribution of PDUs within the triangle? You know the.
I do not offhand.
Okay. All right. That's fine. I can ask Manuel. That's okay.
Yep. Okay. And of course, we want to have some fun with the class. So we've talked a little bit about PeopleCert. PeopleCert is the organization that conducts the exam. It is proctored. I mentioned that you have to have a camera, and they will watch you take the exam. At the end of your hour or hour and 15 minutes, when you complete the exam, or you actually push a button that you have finished taking the exam, you will get immediate results, but they're preliminary results. You'll get the final results within a couple of days after you take the exam. So there are 40 questions on the exam. So in order to reach the 65% passing rate, you need to answer 26 of the 40 correctly. So this course is accredited by the DevOps Institute, and we'll be talking a little bit more about it coming up in a couple of slides here. So I don't know if you're familiar with Bloom's taxonomy, but Benjamin Bloom was an American educational psychologist, and he put together a taxonomy to help teachers categorize their learning objectives, and then from that to assess learning achievements of their students. Because this is a foundation class or a basic class, the questions on the exam are only going to use the first two of Bloom's taxonomy, in that it will test for knowledge of the concepts associated with DevOps, and then it will also test your comprehension of the concepts. So, in other words, can you apply what you've learned in terms of raw information? So the Bloom 2 questions then, or the comprehensive questions, are more example-oriented and require that you think about what you've learned and demonstrate your understanding. So we've talked briefly about PeopleCert and them conducting the exam. This slide recognizes that the DevOps Institute was formed in order to create a global learning community for emerging DevOps practices. Note that it's emerging. So unlike the project management professional, where all the different aspects of project management are defined, DevOps is not like that. In fact, you're going to see in a couple of slides here that there are a number of different sources that you can use to help you with your DevOps implementation. The DevOps Institute was started in 2015 and now has registered education partners like Global Links in more than 20 countries. So this agenda was originally written for a 2 8-hour day class schedule, but we're just going to break up each of the days into 2 segments. So today we're going to talk about what is DevOps and why DevOps is important now, Some of you have mentioned that you've been hearing about it or learning some about it, and we're going to solidify that in your mind, why DevOps is important. I mentioned earlier that DevOps goes beyond Dev and Ops and that it includes the business. So we're going to look at the business and the IT perspectives. And then we'll conclude today by talking about the DevOps principles and introducing them. And they are known as the 3 ways, which comes from a business novel called The Phoenix Project. And we'll be talking about that as we go along. Then tomorrow we'll be covering sections on the DevOps practices, some of the practices that are associated with it, and they're listed here, as well as how DevOps works with other frameworks. So I was asking about your experience with Agile IT Service Management, or ITIL, and Lean, because those frameworks are key components of this thing that we call DevOps. So then on the 3rd day, we're going to talk about the first 2 of the DevOps values, culture and automation. So we'll spend about half the time on each of them. So they're major sections. So one of the challenges that IT people have in implementing DevOps is that the culture of the organization is a critical element to that. And you may find that you need to make major changes in the culture of the organization in order to be effective with DevOps. And we'll talk about some of the considerations, not only for what should the culture look like, but what are some of the models that are out there to help you understand the culture, and then to identify some behaviors that ideally people will have in order to maximize what you can gain from DevOps. Automation plays a key component. If you have connections to vendors, oftentimes they believe that what they are trying to sell you is DevOps. And we're going to learn that automation plays a key role, and those products are very important, but there's much more to DevOps than the automation tools that help you move faster. Then the last day, we're going to cover the last 3 of the DevOps values. They're relatively small sections. So we'll recognize that Lean is one of the DevOps values. We'll talk about the importance of measurement, and what are some of the measurements that you need to be looking at associated with DevOps and the importance of those. David talked about using measurements, to determine the value that his organization is delivering to the government. So we'll talk about the importance of measurements. Sharing is a very important value for DevOps, in that we'll be talking throughout the class really about the importance of communication and collaboration that historically, particularly with waterfall projects, was not encouraged. But with DevOps, that's a critical aspect of it, because if you're going to move fast and deliver software fast, then your people need to be working together very closely. Then we'll talk also about how DevOps applies to the company or organization. What are some of the roles? You may have heard the term DevOps engineer. And there are, if you go on LinkedIn and search for DevOps engineer, You'll find people that say that's their title, but we're going to learn about whether or not that is something that you should consider in your organization. We'll also talk about other organizational considerations and then talk about how you can get started, and also recognize that there are risks as well as critical success factors to implementing DevOps. So that's what we're going to be covering over the next 4 days. Any questions about the agenda? Since I can't see you, I will periodically be stopping and asking if you have any questions, and I'll pause for just a little bit, and if no one speaks up, then I'll just continue. But by all means, you can also interrupt me. That's fine.
Hey, one quick question, John.
Sure.
On the list of participants, there's a global links and the calling user for. Are you the global link user?
Yes.
Okay.
Well, I am John from the Audible connection, but what you see on your computer screen is the global links.
Right. No, just in case I want to send you a chat on the private line.
Okay. Okay.
So it would be John, right?
Yes.
All right,
that's fine.
You. That's all I need, yes.
Actually, it would be global links, I think. Yeah, because John is only the Audible connection.
Oh, I see. Okay. All right. Okay.
Yeah,
right,
I like to dial in rather than using my computer because I think the quality of the communication is better.
Yes. Okay, thank you.
You're very welcome. So just like the project management professionals have a PMBOK or a source of knowledge for project management, in the case of DevOps, we have what is called a CBOK, and that's short for a collective body of knowledge. So there's no single source of information about DevOps. There are a number of different reference guides. There are resources online. There are different conferences that are held. Of course, some of the automation companies also talk about DevOps. There are various case studies. So DevOps is built on the collective experiences and the insights of multiple thought leaders and resources. And this is important because DevOps touches virtually every aspect of IT and even beyond IT, as we've mentioned, in that you're focused on your customers as the end result, and you're focused on meeting the needs of the business. So when you think of DevOps, and it includes culture and automation and management and quality and human resources and your organizational structure, you can see why it would just be too difficult to put all of that together into a single body of knowledge. And of course, it's continuing to evolve as well, in that there is no one best practice, if you will, for DevOps. It's what are the components of DevOps that you need in your organization or the organization that you're working for in order to effectively deliver software to your customers. So we'll start out with the question of what is DevOps? And here we've got a video by Damon Edwards called The History of DevOps. And I think it gives you a good understanding of where this movement or journey of DevOps started. So with that, the audio for the video will come through your computer. So it will not come through the audio connection if you're dialed in. So I just wanted to warn you that. Make sure you turn on the audio on your computer in order to listen to the video. So with that, let me, I'll put my phone on mute and get the video started.